how many spoons do you have? That's a question that I think anybody with a chronic illness or multiple chronic illnesses have, or maybe even if you just kind of struggle with fatigue, energy in general, you probably want to know how much energy you have per day or what capacity you have for doing things per day. Not only so you know what your limit is, but also so you know what to plan in for a day on average, so that you don't overexhaust yourself, so you don't push yourself into like a level of severe fatigue. So to help you answer that question, I've created this free worksheet. This is based on kind of like a ton of articles and advice based on spoon theory about kind of like how to identify how many spoons you have, kind of like your average daily fatigue level, what fatigue level you have for different activities. And hopefully by creating this free worksheet, you'll kind of get a clearer sense of how to plan your energy, your fatigue per day based on kind of where you're at in terms of your average fatigue level, how fatigued you get per activity, things like that. So yeah, I hope this helps you to just answer a ton of questions about your fatigue and build a routine that kind of is less likely to kind of make you fatigued as well. When you first open this sheet, look a little bit ugly. There's not going to be any data in here. There's a demo sheet that we'll run through now here for you. But when you first open this sheet, you're going to go here and you're going to want to make a copy, and you're going to copy that over to your own Google Drive or your own Google Sheets account. And that's going to let you edit this document. The version you see in my Google Drive is literally my own file that you'll be copying, and so you can't edit it. You'll need to copy it first, and then you'll be able to come and use it and kind of enter data. And once you do start entering data, you'll see that like it starts populating and looks a bit less ugly, and you'll be able to kind of get the value from this. But yeah, just quickly, let's have a look. I've included a fatigue scale here based on the Bell CFIDS fatigue scale. I've taken that from the Mepedia website. This is going to give you a description for kind of like each of these different levels of fatigue. I think usefully, even if the descriptions kind of maybe you don't feel apply perfectly for you, you can see that there's kind of like moderate, mild, no fatigue, severe fatigue up at this end as well. So you can get a sense that 0 is no fatigue, 10 is really severe, you're unable to do anything, you can't care for yourself, and use that as a way to kind of like start entering data into this sheet. So just very quickly, this is essentially a kind of a 14-day sheet that kind of calculates your average fatigue score for every activity that you do. And so I filled this in myself over the past 2 weeks to kind of like get some insights into my own fatigue levels. And basically, this sheet is quite simple. It's just a list of my daily activities in kind of a rough order of how I would usually do them, all the way throughout the day. And then there are some blocks here that let you enter your average fatigue level for each of these activities. I'd like to say that I filled these in as soon as I'd done each of these activities. Realistically, at the end of each day, I kind of went back and had to think about how fatigued I was after each of these. Some days I'd sit down at lunch and kind of fill out the morning, and then I'd sit in bed at night and kind of fill in the rest of the day. There's not really a right or a wrong way to do this. I think it's more just a case of getting a sense of, over a period of time, collecting a big enough sample of data that you can say, on average, each activity leaves me feeling this fatigued, typically. And that data will give us like the opportunity to get some insights into like how you should manage your fatigue day to day. And so yeah, all you need to do is basically go through each of these activities, enter your fatigue score for each, and then after 2 weeks you'll have some interesting insights, hopefully. Feel free to edit these as well. These don't have to stay, you don't have to use my ones basically. I'd say you can't probably add an additional rows without maybe messing with some of the formulas. So use these kind of 71 blocks you have for now, edit them however you want. Even if you edit them, they'll kind of populate properly into the other bits of the Excel sheet as well, so that shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, essentially that's the overview of the sheet. It's just activities and the fatigue score for each of those activities over 14 days. I appreciate it maybe takes a bit of energy to actually complete this sheet as well, but hopefully it's kind of a simple enough bullet journal that it doesn't kind of take too much out of you. All right, so let's look at some of the insights that this sheet gives us as well. So really simply, you'll see here that you get an average score for each activity over that 14-day period. And if you wanted to, a really simple way just to view the activities that most fatigue you would just be to kind of select all of these, filter them, sort them C to A, and you can see the activities that kind of made you, or made me most fatigued in this case. Social events with parents, probably don't need to get into that. Meal prep, cleaning the living room, some of these other things, maybe where there's a bigger sample of data. Consuming caffeine, I always get so exhausted in the afternoons when I drink caffeine, especially early in the morning. Drinking alcohol, I do very rarely. When I do, it has a really negative impact on me. And so, you can see that it's quite easy to get a sense of the activities that maybe make you most fatigued, that maybe you need to create boundaries for, maybe you need to do less of, maybe you need to just schedule differently, pace yourself a little bit with those ones. So that's initially some kind of like really simple value you can kind of get from this worksheet. You'll see here as well, I've made notes for myself based on these things like sleep. Sometimes I'm waking up fatigued. What can I do with my kind of sleep hygiene routine to help improve the level of exhaustion I experience upon waking? Use this space just to kind of annotate areas you think you could kind of improve essentially. And that might be, asking for more support at work, kind of like choosing to pace activities throughout your day. Maybe like for me, meeting up with my parents less often, or even just doing more of the things that maybe make you less fatigued. We'll talk about the fact that there's kind of like a little breakdown here of kind of questions you should ask and frequency you should kind of partake in activities with a different average score. And here, I think for activities that don't fatigue you, it's also worth asking, do these activities actually give you energy or kind of help to reduce fatigue? So for me in here, where I've seen that, after I've kind of done some high fatigue activities throughout my day, at the end of finishing my work day, is there something I can do immediately afterwards that helps to reduce fatigue? And for me, that could be something like watching TV or gaming, where the fatigue level afterwards is minimal. I think those activities where I'm kind of able to space out a bit, just relax, not have to think too much about anything, not have to socialize, probably quite good for me. So as well as figuring out what you need to do less of, maybe it's a case of finding the things that maybe help you to recover from high fatigue activities as well. The other thing that's included here is a cumulative fatigue score. This kind of counts up the fatigue level from all of your activities to kind of like give you a sense of maybe the number of activities or the cumulative fatigue score before you kind of really, really start to struggle. And you'll see why that's useful further down here. There are a few other little calculations. So average fatigue per activity per day, total daily fatigue level. This one's maybe useful if you want to spot days where you were kind of less fatigued and look back to see which activities you did or didn't do on those days. And then similarly, high fatigue days, you can look through here and see maybe there were things that didn't help you on these days. Consuming alcohol and consuming caffeine certainly didn't help there for me. Something that's a little bit tucked away as well is this, how much energy did you start your day with? This is kind of a little bit helpful just to get a sense of like average energy score per day, and that's kind of calculated down here a little bit as well. I think what this is really useful for is if you know that you have an average amount of energy. For me, that was 5. I can say that on a day with 5 energy, I should probably be doing a certain number of activities that we'll talk about in a minute. But if I wake up with 7 energy, maybe there's a different level of activities that I can do that day. Maybe instead of doing my typical average number before I'm fatigued, I can do a few more. That's not as calculated out here for you, but maybe that's an addition I can make in the future if you think that'd be helpful. The other thing that's in here that is calculated is just the number of activities you're able to do before you've reached a fatigue level of 5 and a fatigue level of 8. You can see that it can swing quite widely. So here, I started to get fairly severely fatigued after just 22 activities, whereas here I did 64. I imagine this is because on this day I probably did some things that were maybe higher fatigue rated, maybe earlier in the day as well. So yeah, finishing work that day was especially hard, and that'll be why I kind of reached that lower number. And so the benefit of having this averaged out is you can see typically the average number of activities you can do before you kind of reach a high level of fatigue. So let's have a quick look through the metrics in this report, because this is really where you can start to answer questions about your fatigue. We can see your average energy level per day, which we've kind of discussed maybe the value of already. Average fatigue per activity, so typically an activity will make me a 3 on the fatigue scale. Average daily fatigue level means that usually I'm, across all of my activities, I'm getting a cumulative total of a score of 126. Fatigue, that's across an average number of activities, 46 per day. There are 24 activities that give me a fatigue score of over 5, and there are 12 activities that give me a fatigue score of kind of less than 5. I believe that is possibly less than 3. Let's have a look at that. Oh, these are activities that give me a fatigue score of 1 or 0. So there are 12 things that don't exhaust me or don't fatigue me at all. And you might wonder kind of what these fatigue metrics are useful for. And actually, it's really for this fatigue goals section. A lot of this data is just used down here to help calculate what you should take away from this report. So it lets me assess the number of daily activities I should do before I'm likely to hit a fatigue level of 5. So if I do 23 activities with an average fatigue level of 3, I know that's probably the limit I'll hit before my fatigue begins to get moderate. And so I need to probably then sit down and say, okay, what are the 23 things I should do today? What are the things I need to do today before I then exhaust myself or before I push myself too far? We've got the same thing here for a kind of severe level of fatigue. So before you hit a fatigue level of 8, that's 35 activities. So on a day where you either have a bit more energy or a day where you really have to get through some kind of difficult things, if you know, for example, for me, it would be that I've got work meetings, lots of calls, lots of messages I have to respond to. On those days, I should maybe recognize that there are those activities that will give me a score of 8, and then I need to look back and say, okay, well, what are the other things I need to do to get through that day without pushing myself beyond this number of activities? I can also see here that actually, on average, I'm doing 46 things when I should be doing 35 or 23. I need to get rid of kind of 24 activities per day on average to reduce my fatigue level. It's probably easier said than done. There are lots of daily things that add up. But I think what it says to me is that I'm doing too much every day right now, and that's not helping me with my fatigue. And so I can see as well that typically my cumulative fatigue, I'm able to do kind of I get 61 fatigue points before my fatigue is a kind of a severe level there as well. I don't know if this is as helpful or as clear as these other 3 metrics, but basically this is the number of activities I should be doing on average to kind of avoid getting severely fatigued, and this is the number of activities I'm doing over that limit, and I think that's really what's helpful here. Is this is how many spoons I have, this is how many activities I need to cut out of my daily routine to make sure that I'm hitting this limit without pushing myself further. And so this is really going to help you to pace yourself. This is going to help you to say, okay, day to day I need to do X number of activities. What should those be today versus tomorrow versus the next day? If there's a day where you know you have to do something that's going to be high fatigue, it's going to help you kind of plan back and figure out kind of what fewer things can you do that day to kind of also help you manage fatigue. And so my aim with this worksheet was to help you answer how many spoons do I have. That's essentially what this is. I've got 23. I've got 23 spoons on average per day. This will be unique for you as well. You might have more, you might have less, but hopefully between this number and understanding your kind of average fatigue per activity, you'll be able to plan in your 23 activities or your 35 activities depending on your capacity for the day. And hopefully you'll be able to get a sense of kind of what a good day looks like versus a bad day, the days where you need to make improvements. Maybe you'll spot patterns throughout the work week, weekends, kind of people you see, different activities, and maybe that's helpful as well for kind of figuring out how to pace yourself. But yeah, more than anything, I just wanted to create an opportunity to help people to answer these questions about how many spoons you have and to kind of quantify that with some data so that you can better plan and manage your fatigue. and maybe also identify, the things you need to do more of, the things you need to do less of to help you with managing your fatigue as well. And this isn't perfect by any means. As with like the other resources we create, they're based on kind of like usually scientific papers, research, and kind of advice from the chronic illness community. And so we've tried to make them as kind of human as possible and as useful as possible, but like that doesn't mean they can't be improved. So obviously there'll be links to contact me within the description of this video too. So get in touch, tell me how we can make this better for you, how we can improve it, what else we could do, and I'll spend time doing that if we get enough kind of requests for something as well. And if you want to also check out some of the other free resources we've created this year, there'll be a link in the description for that too. But yeah, hopefully this helps you, and I'd love to hear your feedback about whether it is having a positive impact for you or not. Cool, thanks so much.